Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna be doing something a little different. I'm gonna get political. Well, kinda, okay? And my purpose for this rant is not really to prescribe any political affiliations. You can be conservative, you can be a Democrat, whatever you want, just as long as you stay true to your values. This is something that has been on my mind for a little while, and I kind of want to get it out. And to shape up the narrative that I want to present, I'm gonna tell you a little story. So not that long ago, I went to my sister's house, and I don't usually visit my sisters. We tend to butt heads a lot because of our characters. I love her as family, but we're very different people. So as I was saying, me and my sister are very different people. And I actually want to say that when it comes to my family, they tend to be very Christian conservative, for the most part. I would say I'm probably one of the most liberal, if not the most liberal person in my family. But I also want to say I'm fairly old, okay? I'm 38. I come from a different generation, and so does my sister. She's 10 years older than me. So that's kind of important to the story. And so we ended up talking about, about the trans issues that are happening nowadays, right? And my sister came from the perspective that she doesn't understand why trans people are trying to, become trans. To her, it seems, to her and to a lot of people which I've seen, it seems that that whole trans thing is just a joke. It's just people trying to identify as something else out of a whim. You know what I mean? Oh my God, this is a lot of gold. Thank you. This is why you get archers in this game, okay? The whole point of this game is just trying to expand your territory, which is something I'm gonna do. Jesus, I'm loaded. She brought up the examples that people use as a meme, like, oh, what if I identify as a helicopter? I identify as a helicopter. We all seen those memes, right? And then she showed me her YouTube feed, and it was all conservative stuff like Ben Shapiro and people like that. And at that moment I was like, oh my God, my sister has become like a reactionary. You know what I mean? A reactionary against the left, against the extreme left. And it really reminded me of myself. I don't know if you guys remember when that whole trend of skeptics on YouTube that were very anti-SJW. It was right at when the beginning of the SJW started to become like a thing, and people became like a reactionary against it. I got sunken into that hole, dude. I remember at the time I heard people complaining about representation in movies, like, oh, why does every character gotta be a white straight male? And I was like, yeah, why are people making such a big issue out of this? I really fell down into that hole, okay? And seeing my sister fall into that hole when she's 10 years older than me kind of surprised me, because growing up I always saw my sister as a very liberal person, and she was. And you gotta take into account that she was 10 years older than me, so when I was younger, she was my model for what a teen is supposed to be. You know what I mean? Before I became a teen and I experienced all those emotions and all those phases that you go through, I saw her go through it, and I remember she being fairly liberal. But now she's become a Christian, and she's a mother of 2 children, and she's become more conservative, right? And like I said, I've seen her become like a reactionary to the left. Now when it comes to my sister and me, we come from a different generation, right? I was born in the 80s, she was born in the 70s. During that time, we didn't really have to address this trans revolution that's been happening in society, right? The things that we were fighting against, or were things that we're trying to evolve, were racial issues, like, oh no, these guys steal our gold. Archers, please defend me. Let me upgrade this, actually. Kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him! So yeah, as I was saying, growing up from our generation, and it was easier to accept radical changes in a society as you're younger, you know what I mean? Because when you're from a young generation, you tend to defy the values of the generation before you, and you tend to relate more to your younger generation, right? Because you're young too, and you tend to understand their values a little more and what they're trying to do, as trying to shape society. But when you're older, it can be a little harder. I'm not saying it's impossible, right? I'm saying it could be a little harder to adapt to the changes that society is bringing. But it was very weird to see my sister fall down this reactionary hole that I fell down like years ago, and that I had to climb out of, honestly. So yeah, we were talking about the trans issues, and I thought she would have a more liberal approach, because I always know that my sister has always approved of, like, you know, homosexual people and even trans people, probably when they were younger. But you gotta understand, when we were younger in our generation, what we call trans people were just people. It mainly used to be guys that wanted to dress up as girls. It was mainly cross-dressing. That's what we used to call trans people. Back then, it wasn't really trying to biologically change how your body works or how your body looks. It was more about cross-dressing, honestly. That's what we used to call trans people. So I remember my sister was fine with that. But see, after becoming a parent and hearing about, you know, trying to give like children puberty blockers and trying to help kids transition at an earlier age, this really scares her. And I'm not gonna lie, this is something that I really haven't completely made my mind up yet, you know what I mean, in terms of this issue. It seems like a very dangerous road, right? But I can't say that I'm fully against it, especially if it comes to like individual cases that really feel that they're like a different gender inside. But what really surprised me is the reactionary aspect of it, you know what I mean? How she heard these news from the extreme left, and then she suddenly switched to the right side, to the right, you know what I mean? Now, like I said myself, I fell down that reactionary hole, and I used to dislike SJWs. I still kind of do from the extreme left, you know what I mean? And often it's not that I disagree with their message, it's something I disagree with their attitude and the way they use shaming as a political tool, you know what I mean? But here's something that I had to learn through introspection and through also watching people like, I would say, Destiny, and even people like Bosch, people like that helped me understand a little bit more how to get out of that reactionary hole that I had against the extreme left. Is that I had to introspect and realize that a lot of my values are still liberal values, and how I shouldn't completely betray my values, my core values, just because the people on my side are taking them to the extreme, you know what I mean? Because when you're on the left, right, and you consider yourself a liberal, you're a lefty, right, and you hear people from the extreme left say stuff that you don't agree about and be so aggressive and be so vindictive towards people that don't understand their position or people that oppose their positions, you kind of feel betrayed by your own side, you know what I mean? Because it seems like they're forsaking rationality for an agenda, you know what I mean? And I'm not that type of person, right? So it's very natural to become a reactionary against them, against your own side. But you also got to realize, becoming a reactionary and taking the opposite side, where is that going to lead you? In a way, to me, it seems like a very immature reaction, a very immature, spontaneous reaction, impulsive, I'd rather I should say, that people tend to fall into very easily. For example, you have let's say you have somebody that you don't like, somebody that's very obnoxious with their, you know, extreme lefty agenda, and they keep talking to you about, you know, trans issues or like extreme left issue, communism, and just because you hate them, you become the total opposite and you start to say, oh, I hate trans people, just to get a rise out of them. It's very easy to do that just to piss them off. But what you're doing eventually, but basically what you're doing is you're role-playing as the other side, right? And the problem with that is that the more that you role-play as the other side, the more you're very likely to start to believe those kind of things. Or you start to believe, I must be from the other side because I don't agree with this side. And that's not really true. So seeing my sister consume all that reactionary media just kind of surprised me, you know what I mean? Knowing her growing up, knowing how liberal she was. And just like me, when I went through that reactionary phase that I had to get out of, I kind of understand how she got there. Because the media you consume does tend to shape you, alright? And listen, I'm going to say something, okay? I don't dislike Ben Shapiro, okay? I don't dislike none of those people that were her feed that tend to be more conservative. I actually tend to be a person that tends to consume from both sides, lefty and righties, especially because nowadays the extreme left have sort of becomes like was like very echo chamber kind of people, and the right tends to be the one that's more open for debates and open to battle ideas. You know what I mean? But I don't want my own side to push me to the other side. Oh my God, look, I'm overflowing with gold, dude. I need to spend it, dude. It's just, I'm so bad at talking and playing, dude. I got a one-track mind. So I'm just gonna spend some on some upgrades. Let's upgrade this. What I'm hoping is that she has the maturity that to eventually climb out of that. Or mind you, like I said, she could just become a conservative person for the rest of her life. That could be very well a possibility. But I think there's also a possibility that she's just pushing back again to the extreme left, not realizing that she's kind of getting pushed to the right. So I'm trying to be understanding, because that's something that I went through, right? And something that it's something that is still fairly on my mind. Like I said, I still don't agree with the tactics of the extreme left. I often agree with their messaging, but I don't often agree with the tactics that they use, which have been very effective. And I can see how it pushes people to become a reactionary, but still, that doesn't mean that I have to betray my core values, things that I actually believe in my core, just to oppose them. Now, like I said, in my sister's case and my case, it's a generational thing. It's a generational thing that we have to get over, to adapt to these modern times. Because like I said, every new generation challenges the preconceptions of the older generations. That's what my generation did, that's what her generation did, that's what even my mother's generation did. But I would say it's a little tougher to adapt to modern times when you come from a different generation, right? This generation is focusing more on gender, you know what I mean? And the fluidity of gender, the fluidity of identity. It's not, I'm not gonna lie, it's something that I still have to get used to. I still have to try to understand a bit more. I don't want to completely dismiss it as a joke, as some people do, because I don't think it is. I think there's real value in what they're trying to do. You know what I mean? But when you get older, and you have kids especially, right? You start to have this mindset of like, oh, think of the children. I don't want my kid to become a trans. Dude, that's not gonna happen if your kid is not a trans, okay? I think some people are thinking that just because they're trying to advocate for these trans issues, right, and for this identity issues, parents start to think that, oh, my kid is going to be very susceptible to that, and they're just going to become a trans because it's like the fad. It's like the new fad to become, you know, a girl if you're a boy, or a boy if you're, you know, or backwards. You know what I mean? And it doesn't really work like that. Now, to not completely dismiss that point, yes, it's going to probably have some influence, right? It's something new that our generation didn't, you know, have to address. But that doesn't mean that every kid is gonna be susceptible to that. It's only gonna apply to kids that actually relate to that mindset. There's a lot of kids that won't relate to that and don't feel there are different gender inside. You know what I mean? It's not an influence that is gonna completely change every human being. It's just gonna address the ones that does have that does feel like that. But like I said, parents are very scared when it comes to like how the world is shaping, and we tend to be very scared. People from older generation tend to be very scared how the world is evolving to a world where we don't really know what's happening. So when you become a parent, when you become older, it's very likely that you start to become more conservative, because some things are just too liberal. You know what I mean? And I struggle with that concept myself, right? But I try not to get stuck in my own little bubble of my generation and from my era. I try to keep in touch with the modern world and the modern perspectives that we have, and try to keep in touch with the modern perspective new generations have. And if I actually see something of value there, if I actually see something genuine, a genuine message that if I actually see a genuine message that they're feeling inside, you know what I mean? I I'll try my best to understand it and respect it, not dismiss it as a joke.